I'll talk a little bit about how it was growing up with that kind of sexual trauma in your life. Things did look reasonably good from the outside, but if you peeled back the onion just a little bit, they weren't. I was engaged in, even from the age of 10, I started engaging in self harm. I stick myself with pins ritualistically. I would, as a teenager, I cut. So the behaviors were always there. I think about it as if I had survival skills. I was paddling upstream, doggy paddling upstream in a raging current.
It is time for a mental health break to help you get through the rest of your day. I'm excited to keep this podcast going. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I have a familiar face with me today. Andrea has a very courageous story she will share today to let everyone know that you are not alone. She was sexually abused by her father before she turned 5. When her mother discovered it, she went blind. Literally. Diagnosed with hysterical blindness, she never spoke of what she saw again. Instead, Andrea was left in a household where abuse, denial, and emotional abandonment shaped every corner of her reality, and for decades, it looked like, from the outside, she was thriving. Successful Manhattan attorney, married, high-functioning, and always smiling, but when a man assaulted her on a crowded subway in her 30s, she shattered. Panic, PTSD, and repressed memories flooded her system and forced her to confront everything she thought she'd buried. Andrea, congratulations for how far you've come and continuing to share your story. It's great to see you. Welcome to A Mental Health Break.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, Vincent. And boy, you just summarized everything. I'll talk a little bit about how it was growing up with that kind of sexual trauma in your life. Things did look reasonably good from the outside, but if you peeled back the onion just a little bit, they weren't. I was engaged in, even from the age of 10, I started engaging in self harm. I stick myself with pins ritualistically. I would, as a teenager, I cut. So the behaviors were always there. I think about it as if I had survival skills. I was paddling upstream, doggy paddling upstream in a raging current, and I somehow managed to survive, but they were flawed. And I think what was also flawed was my definition of resilience. I thought resilience meant just tough it out, pretend it didn't happen. From my mother, who did go actually physically blind, as you said, and she did get her sight back when I was about a month later, but refused to acknowledge this until the very, very end of her life. She finally did. I was taught by her and had a great, unique ability to compartmentalize. It's not that unique. When I hear more and more survivor stories, my behaviors, the things I used to survive were pretty much what everybody else used. So my story, as you said, I was 33 and I actually wasn't married at the time, but I had been married. And I'd been married quite a few times by then. Because the other thing I come to realize, it was almost like I was able to be married, but the intimacy muscle in my body, in my mind, or that you all develop had been severed. So I could only maintain a certain amount of intimacy. Anyway, at 33, somebody grabbed my breast on the subway and I had a complete nervous breakdown and came to the point where I realized that if I didn't get help, I don't know that I would have survived.
Well,
So
thank you for sharing all that. And again, congratulations on how far you've come. You recognize that it was the time for therapy now. I'd love to just touch on this for a second. There's a lot of misconception with therapy that if it doesn't work once, it's not for them. Please share your experiences as you were getting started in case there's someone tuning in today who has been on the fence. They're feeling the same as you did, but they need a push in the right direction.
So I actually had once tried to talk to a therapist before and it didn't work for me. But when I went to see the particular therapist I saw, I found somebody who I could really relate to and who helped me, who was the first person who told me, you were touched without your consent. And I had had some other sexual assaults in between after my father because I really didn't understand the line between danger and safety when it came to men or people in general. And I finally found somebody. I ultimately decided to go into a 12-day inpatient program. It was actually not geared towards sexual abuse survivors, but as more about adult children of alcoholics, because my dad was an alcoholic too. And it was there that I really came to terms with telling my story to a whole group. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I write and I say, I could no longer remember how to forget. I trained myself to put everything in a black box, and finally it hit the point where I couldn't remember. And I really think I would have killed myself if I hadn't gotten help.
Well, I'm so glad that you didn't and you kept going. Again, everyone. I said it before, I'll say it again. You are not alone. She just touched on therapy as one of the tools in her tool chest. Would you mind sharing some other things that you do, Andrea, to take care of your mental health?
It's kind of like an onion healing, isn't it? We don't walk out. As I thought when I left that inpatient program, I was going to walk out and one sunny day, I was going to be like, wow, I'm cured. Everything's fine. And everything is fine. I just want to assure your listeners that healing is absolutely possible. But I see a therapist again. When I wrote my book, I found that I really needed to go back into therapy. And I did a little bit of both EMDR that time and talk therapy. But on a day-to-day basis, I practice a few things. The first thing I do, and it sounds so Pollyanna-ish, but I start my day with gratitude. The trajectory of my life could have been so very different, truthfully. And that's why I encourage survivors to talk to somebody, talk to a trusted person to get help. You don't have to suffer. They're not in the way that you're suffering now. I've also learned I do a lot of yoga, and yoga's taught me how the difference between discomfort and pain. And I can sit with discomfort. I've learned to know that even when I feel these feelings, and sometimes little ones rise, that these little feelings of shame or I'm not good enough, they rise, but I can sit for a few minutes and let the discomfort be there and then reset. So it's tools like that, learning how to, also meditate. So I am one big self-care junkie. Um, but it's all good ways. It's not a bad junkie, not a
Yes, I was going
drugstore.
to say, in the ways you're describing, it's very important to have self care. We cannot help others or be a best friend to others unless we're filling our cup and we're taking care of ourselves. And you teased it a second there, the book, right? It came up again. Writing for me also is very therapeutic.
I was just going to go through that. So journaling had always been therapeutic for me. And even as a little girl, I had a diary, a little pink diary. Now, I was afraid to put my day-to-day thoughts in. So I wrote fiction. I wrote about another girl who had the life that I wanted to have. And I had what I call my Emily's diaries, which were Emily's life and Emily's story. Wasn't mine, but somewhere inside of me, I knew that maybe one day I could be Emily or some version of Emily. And so I always wrote, I always journaled. I love to read. Reading got me through my childhood because it gave me both a healthy escape as well as some understanding that other lives were possible. So those things really helped me. And writing my book was a different thing altogether because I was already had been through years of therapy and was really feeling grounded. I wrote my book after the Me Too movement kind of awakened in me something to realize that stories were helping other people and that I had a story that I could share. And that kind of excavation, one thing I would tell people is I would advise to have a strong foundation in healing at that point. But again, another layer.
And that's the whole point of trying to bring guests to this show is there are many layers, so we need to help you get through each and every one the best we can. Remember, there is no such thing as perfect, everyone. Let's focus on progress, not perfection. Now, I know you were journaling. Did you always have aspirations of being also a published author?
I did, truthfully. I love books. So my mother wasn't the perfect mother, but she gave me one thing. For her, books were like air. And she gave me that. I love books and I wanted to be a writer my whole life. I actually chose other careers. First, I was a nurse and then I was a lawyer. And I chose those careers because I was a little bit afraid of the writing life. I knew enough about how unstable my childhood had been that I wanted to have my feet kind of firmly planted somewhere. But deep inside, I always wanted to write. And I have almost all my life. So
I love it. Well, everyone, she has a Writing with Authors episodes. Depending on when this airs, the batch of 10 of them is going to come out hopefully sometime this fall. We are looking for just one or two more writers to get to that milestone. But as far as today's amazing guest, what advice could you give someone who maybe is afraid to speak up? You just mentioned how you realized that your story did have this weight.
yeah. And I think my advice to them is I know it's hard right now. There are a lot of resources. And even if you're not comfortable speaking up to someone you know, or even going to a therapist, there are a lot of hotlines available to you where you can at least speak to somebody and start the process of telling your story. Because I can tell you from personal experience, you can try really hard to keep it inside. And I did, I tried to be smart enough, educated enough, perfect enough to pretend away the abuse. And it's not possible. For all of you, I wish it were that easy. So start with a hotline and then try to take it the step further because these secrets really will control you think that you're controlling your life by not telling your secrets because maybe you don't want to live in trauma, but your secrets will control your life if you don't tell. And really, I think we have to embrace our trauma in some ways. It sounds strange, but by embracing it and embracing your past, you'll learn that some of the things that happened to you made you the wonderful human being that you are today.
Amazingly said there. And keeping it all in even after my traumatic brain injury. I don't know if I was embarrassed at first, but it just wasn't something I wanted to talk about and bring up or have more widely known. And then eventually that path changed, of course, where I realized, like you, my story can help other people. So that's what happened with writing and podcasting. And you've been on this podcasting tour. We're lucky to have you back here on the calendar. What have you learned the most about these podcast experiences? I know you said you're enjoying yourself.
So I am now. So, when I first met with you, Vincent, I was a little bit like, oh my God, I haven't done this before.
I remember.
But so one of the things that's happened to me as a result of writing my book, and I had told, therapists and other family members, people about, but I never really publicly ran around telling many people about the fact that I was an incest survivor. With the traumatic brain injury, it struck me the same way. And gift that I got from writing the book and starting to do these podcasts, and I'm very, very involved with the UCLA Rape Treatment Center and Stewart House and I've started realizing that I have a mission. I somehow went from writing a book to having a mission. I never expected to do that. I'm very public about, not only am I a survivor of child sexual abuse, I'm a survivor of incest, which is, I think in many ways the ultimate taboo. And it is, I wasn't my fault. And to the other victims or survivors, it's not yours but it's really changed what I want. I call it my third act because my third act is now to bring awareness to the idea of child sexual abuse, of incest. And if I have to scream the message from the rooftops, I'll do it. So I think that's what I've learned from the podcast. And that's when I started having fun. I said, let go. This is part of that. This is part of this the word journey has been so overused. I almost roll my eyes saying it, but this is part of the journey.
I now love to see your encore career. You're making the most of everything you've been through to make sure everybody else who may be going through something similar has an extra resource in you. And I mean, luckily for you, there's no school for this encore career because you did the nursing, you did the law, you would be right back in school.
Yeah, I would if I could buy. I also have an MFA in creative writing. No, there's no school for this one. This one is self-taught or not self-taught, is taught through, I suppose they say, the school of hard knocks, so to speak. And the thing about my book is I'm lucky because I am at this point able to take for this book my royalties and donate them to rape treatment centers. And that became more and more part of my mission. First, I thought it was going to be 25% to RAINN, and now it's kind of morphed into I'm just donating the royalties, period, to different local organizations. I really believe that these organizations provide a service. And as I said before, I have some of them on my website. I have a resource section for where the hotlines that you can call nationally to get your local hotline, because there are people you can talk to, and all of these hotlines are 24/7. So it's hard right now because a lot of funding's been cut recently, but there are many that still exist.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your generous donations to keep awareness going, research going, and everything in between. I look forward to hearing all the updates in your life soon. I have a feeling eventually another book's going to be coming out with you, so I'll have to. You see the smile is already in the works?
Again, I thought I was going to write a novel, and I do have one in the drawer, but now that this has all happened in this past year, I'm more and more leaning toward writing a second book because the book ends with me getting the help that I need and kind of finding some peace with my mother. But I'm thinking about writing about the aftermath, which wasn't always perfect,
Sure.
and also how I found this point in my life, this ripe old age, how I've really realized, which is another thing, you're never too old to find another path. There are so many paths.
Oh my goodness, you are not that old. Everyone, she's given us so much advice through her courageous testimonial today. But you know what time it is, listeners. Andrea, before I let you go, before I get your contact info, where to get the book, everyone stick around a little longer. What is a piece of advice you can give to someone who is struggling today and tuning on?
I got three. Piece number one, it's not your fault. When you look in the mirror, please remember that. Don't, when you have that shame, it is not your fault. Piece number two, tell someone. I know it's hard. And as I said, if you can't do it in front of somebody, tell somebody anonymously. Start the process. If you're already getting help and you're in the process of therapy, I know that you're going to feel these days are going to be 10 steps backwards, and then you'll feel like you're on a cycle, a never ending hamster wheel. But again, it does get better. It does. I promise if you just stay with it, it will get better. And you can have that life, and you can learn how to embrace this to manage these things that come up to you. So stick with it. If you're there, stick with it. If you're not there, then begin the process. And then finally, last but not least, be kind to yourself.
I love that advice. Thank you for sharing that three-pronged piece. All three were extremely valuable. And everyone, if you're just getting started today, don't be overwhelmed of the big end goal, this big picture. Let's take small, manageable, actionable steps. That's something I do every day with my entrepreneurship endeavors and also every other part of my life. Andrea, you knocked this one out of the park again. Everyone stick around soon for her Writing with Authors testimonial. And remember to subscribe to stay current. But we need to know, where is this book? Where can we find more on you? Where can we connect with you?
So the book is called Such a Pretty Picture, and it's a memoir by me, Andrea Leeb, Leeb, on Amazon Bookshop, the usual places, as it were. And my launch date, and this may air after my launch date, is October 14th. So it will be available for delivery or order on October 14th. And you can find out more about me, what I'm up to, my media appearances. More and more is starting to happen, and also about the book. And I believe I have a link to ordering the book, to getting to order the book online, to the places you can go.
Yeah.
And it's Andrea, Andrea, Leeb, Leeb, author.com is my website. And you can also follow me on Instagram, which for me is a newer thing,
Okay.
and that's Andrea, Andrea, Lisa, Lisa, Leeb, Leeb. I'm spelling it because I talk fast. I live in LA, but I'm such a New Yorker that, no offense to my New Yorker friends, I talk fast. People here are always like, you talk so fast.
Yep. Same thing was down here in Florida. Well, thank you for sharing that. Everyone, go ahead and connect with our guest of honor today. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and today is brought to you by Coming Alive Podcastproduction.com. I'm excited to bring on more mental health advocates to let you know, the listeners, you are never alone. Again, be sure to connect with Andrea. She has a lot to offer. And with that, we're signing off from Florida all the way out to California. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vincent.